Australia has its version of the Skinwalker, and the Aboriginal people they refer to it as a Mimi spirit. Some people have also called it the Mim Mim Light, and there's even a cryptid known as the Bunyam, which is said to be the shape-shifting being who lives in water. Now, it differs from the American version because it's a lot of times seen as a ball of light, an orb of light, and it often lures people deep into the bush. Now, this is a story that comes from Victoria along the Great Coastal Highway. This boy said that when he was younger, he lived near the Great Coastal Highway up against the bush. And he said when he was a young boy, he was in the backyard and he was playing alone. Well, his mom was inside the kitchen cooking dinner. And he said all of a sudden, he hears his mom's voice say, "Come inside, like right now." So he ran as fast as he can. He goes in the house and he comes in and he's, like, Mom, what do you want? What do you want? And his mom's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, you called me in." And she goes, I didn't call you in. Like, I've been inside here cooking dinner. And he goes, "No, seriously, you just said my name and told me to come inside." And his mom's like, "No, I did not." And he's like, "Please, Mom, just tell me, you're joking with me because I heard your voice, like, tell me to come inside." And finally she said, "Oh, maybe I did. Maybe I did," to like comfort him. Later that night, he said he's in his bedroom and he was sleeping. And he said he woke up because he heard like this scratching sound. And he said it just kept getting louder and louder. And then he would hear kind of like a tapping sound. And he said he couldn't figure out where that sound was coming from. Like at first he thought maybe it was a possum, like because sometimes animals get in the house. But it just kept getting louder and louder. Finally, he realizes it's coming from the direction of his window. So he goes over to his window and he pulls over the curtains. And he said, standing outside of his window, like tapping on the window, was this very tall, pale white, man-looking creature with solid black eyes just staring at him. And he said he just kind of like started waving his hand towards the window. He starts screaming. His mom comes running in and is like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And he's like, "There's something outside my window. There's something outside my window." His mom looks out the window. There's no one there. But he said his mom was a little freaked out because she seen like scratch marks on the windowsill. And she could tell something was trying to get in the window. So she told him, "You're sleeping in my room tonight." Now, this next story comes from the outback. There were these two guys, and they said they were going on a camping trip. And they were driving deep through the outback, down this, just sandy, windy road. And the one guy said as he was driving, he noticed something ahead up in the road. So he slowed the vehicle down, and as he got a little bit closer, he could see it was a dingo. And he said this dingo wasn't with a pack, it was alone, and it was just chilling by the side of the road, staring at their car. And he said he slowly drove past it, and it just kept eye contact with him. And he said something seemed like really off about this dingo. And so he continued on driving, and when he looked in his mirror, it was gone. Well, finally it started to get dark, and they arrived at their campsite. And he said, there was just absolutely nothing around except for a few like rock formations. So they set up their tent for the night and they make a big fire. He said they were sitting around the campfire and they started to talk about that dingo that he had seen on the road. And he was like, that was really weird, wasn't it? And he said right as they started to talk about it, all of a sudden this Aboriginal man like came up onto their campsite. And they said he just slowly walked up to him and then stopped and like just stood still and was looking like off in the distance. They said he said something in Aborigines and he pointed in a direction and then he turned around and walked away. And so like him and his friend, they're just kind of like, what just happened? Like, what was that all about? So they were a little freaked out, but they were like, maybe he just lives around here or something. So they go to bed for the night, they get in their tents, and they said they were woken in the middle of the night to just this beautiful voice singing. And they were like, it was unlike anything they'd ever heard. So they unzip the tent, they go outside, and they said off in the horizon, they could see this very bright ball of light, and it was glowing like, almost like a metallic gray to a bluish color. And they said it was just sort of moving back and forth, up and down. And the one guy, he starts walking towards this light, and his buddy's like, no, don't go near it, don't go near it. And he's like, I have to see this thing. And he said his buddy, got a little distance ahead of him, and all of a sudden this light flickered out, and he said at the same time his friend was gone. And he got back in the vehicle, he left, and he traveled all the way back to the nearest town, reported his friend missing. They searched for weeks, could not find this guy, and still to this day they have not found this person. Now, this last story, it also comes from Southeast Australia. And there were these two friends who said that they went hiking in the bush, and they stumbled upon this beautiful watering hole. So they were going to go swimming. Well, one of the guys says, I need to go somewhere off here and find a place to use the bathroom. So the other guy just kind of stood there by the watering hole. And he said all of a sudden he sees this beautiful woman with no clothes in the water. And he said she was just kind of twirling her hair, and she was looking at him and smiling and waving. And he said all of a sudden she started waving for him to come to the water. And he didn't know why, but he said he felt entranced. He started walking towards the water. He gets within about 3 steps of the water, and he said all of a sudden his friend yells at him, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Get away from the water. And he said that's when he turned around and looked, and he said what was this beautiful woman was now this very large black looking fish type thing with arms. And this thing just had its mouth open, sticking out of the water. And he said all of a sudden it just submerged itself and disappeared into the watering hole. And so him and his friend were we're out of here, and they took off. So what do you think? Have you ever experienced something strange in Australia?